Hi, and welcome to We Are in Trouble Now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So,
You were looking at me like you're going to say more than that?
yeah. So we were talking on the ride home because what we did was we went for a little walk this morning, because we found out through talking with the therapist and such like that we live a very repetitious lifestyle at the moment.
Yes.
And so walking, we went and got a little walk just to kind of break up the monotony of it. And it was pretty good.
Yeah, it just kind of got us out of our daily routine and a new kind of like, I think to me, it felt like we were in a neutral territory.
Yeah. I mean, we were outside of the house and outside of like things that were, new, it was just a new thing. You had never been there and it's fun to do. And, we kind of got to talking and such. Yeah. And it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and another thing that we were talking about is like, since we do live such a repetitious life, sometimes it's a little difficult, coming up with like, hey, what did
like
you,
talking points and like new, like, hey, what's new with you?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Well, I saw a tree and, because I mean, I never leave the house.
Yeah.
So we were in talking on that dialogue, we were like being like, hey, what do you want to talk about this week on the podcast? And we're like, well, this week looked just like last week. That looked just like the week before.
Yeah. Like you had mentioned the algae bloom in Florida, and we don't live in Florida, nor do we know anything about the algae bloom.
I know.
And it was just like, we were like, oh, well, is this what our viewers want? Hang on.
Bless you. Andy gets so excited when people sneeze.
My allergies are killing me. We were like, is this what, obviously, is this what people want to listen to? And so we were thinking about changing the direction of the podcast that would be more entertaining for the listener opposed to us talking about algae blooms or, what bird flew by our window today kind of thing.
Yeah. Like, what am I doing on my social media platform this week?
Yeah. Because we had started the podcast with the idea of like talk about sobriety and social media and things like that. And those are still very relevant in our life. But I think, we can revisit those topics at any point and then go into something else into the podcast. So maybe cut it in half kind of a thing. Yeah. Like in the beginning, talk about our personal lives and then, end on whatever we decided to go with.
See, because I know that we were talking on the ride home about the different direction, and you came up with an idea of like almost like storytelling. Yeah. And coming up with like not just like a made up story, but doing like a little research about like, like
real life things, or maybe like real life things or like stories at real life places. So like, you could be like, oh, the Bigfoot spotting in like Canada or things like that. Yeah. So,
or like the algae bloom in Florida. And I could be like, because I mean, there are benefits to it. The wildlife absolutely, is the sea creatures in the wildlife.
The sea creatures.
The marine animals actually benefit from that algae bloom until it hits the shore. And then it becomes toxic to them. So when you're talking about stories, I don't know if I would do that, but real life stories, kind of like almost like a reporting, like, like if you turn on to like 2020, they have like a story of like a missing person or like a real life event, right?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
So there was a you just explain my point, but in more detail. But yes.
Right. But no, I was kind of getting it into my mind because it's like, to me, I think it would be really cool if we did like a story on something that just really kind of like piques our interest for that week.
Sure. But it would have to follow under like a genre though. Like one week if you did a story, it can't be about like why 6-inch heels are better than 7-inch heels. And then I do a story about like a rampaging psychopath with like an axe wielding madman. Like there needs to be some sort of like connecting theme. Okay.
So do you want to do like, kind of like, missing, like kind of like a murder mystery kind of story thing?
Or? Oh, it doesn't, I'm impartial to either. As long as it's not ghosts, I'm okay. So like it could be about wildlife, it could be about nature, it could be about national parks. I mean, like that's the thing that, in our 10-minute car ride, we never really like pinpointed. So it could be, really, honestly, it could be about anything.
So do you have any preference as to what you would like it to be?
Well, I think the most entertaining, I think just in terms of like a viewer engagement would be like a missing murder mystery or like missing person or like some sort of like phenomenon kind of thing.
Oh, cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So, like a phenomenon would be like maybe like
UFO abductions,
okay,
or like, somebody went hiking and then, they found weird footprints kind of thing. Okay. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't need to be like a supernatural kind of thing. And I think that's what we need to, work on.
See, now to me, I think that this is going to be something that's going to be kind of like a work in progress, where it's going to be like, kind of like, after each week, we kind of like pinpoint it, like maybe like what we like, what works, what doesn't work kind of thing.
Yeah. Workshop it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, and then the really important thing to us and on the car ride home is like, because I know that we have people who come back each week and listen to our podcast. Yeah. And I don't want it to be where it's like, 1 week you're listening to one thing and then the next week you're listening to something else. For the viewer, for the person listening.
What do you mean by something else though?
Well, it's like, it's like, I wanted them to know what we were doing. Because it's like 1 week we're talking about our relationships, and the next week we're talking about aliens.
Yeah. Which is why this episode is
exactly. Yeah. This is kind of like the transition into our trying to.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, we will still keep like. I don't think the story is gonna take an hour. So like, I think we should still dedicate like 30 minutes to like us, and then if like we run out of, if our current events are all caught up, then we can start the story.
See, I think it should be the other way around. Really? Because I think we should lead into it with a story, because we naturally start talking, you'll have questions, I'll have questions, and it will kind of lead into like a dialogue and then that dialogue, I think that we could just be like, so, hey, what do you have planned for the rest of the week? Or, do you have any, because we used to be where it was like, hey, what, say one good thing that happened to you this week, or, do you have anything exciting coming up this week? Kind of ending more on that.
Well, I think it would vary though, because like if you look at the tone, right? If you're like, and then the axe wielding maniac, killed 19 people and he's still lost to this very day. Also too, I just got an IKEA bench kind of thing. Like you're like, oh, one good thing that happened to me. I think it's too jolting.
Well, I think whichever way you put it, whether first or last, it's still going to be jolting. Well, I mean, you could be like, hey, I just found $100 on the street. I think this is really great. And then this mass murder, it's going to be, I mean, I personally think one way or the other, it's going to be either jolting or not. And personally, if you were going to ask me, I think it's going to be where I think that we should either keep it focusing on our stories or focusing on our life and sobriety, and because
the podcast or just in
the
general?
Podcast.
Okay.
I mean, because don't you think that they're two different mediums? I mean, they're two different.
Well, I think, that's the thing though, is like if people are listening to the podcast, do they want to listen to our life experiences, or do they want to be entertained like through a storytelling fashion?
Well, it's going to be, you know what? I think that there's an audience for each. There's an audience that wants to be entertained through an interesting sort of like, murder mystery kind of thing. And then there's people who want to hear about our lives. But the thing is like, if we keep it with our lives, then we really need to come up with like some serious guidelines of like, hey, you know what? Depression. Let's talk about depression and how I deal with it. And then also to hear some tips on, that I've done a little research and, here's what I have found that are some 10 good tips for your depression. So I think it's we have to pick one or the other.
Really?
Don't you agree?
I mean, I see the thing is I like the idea of like dealing with depression, but I would hate to be in a position where I would give tips on how to deal with depression, because I am not good at dealing with depression.
See, and that's where you would have to be like, okay, according to this article written by blah, 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 here's the 10 tips that I have found. Because, I mean, if it's something that you struggle with, it would be hard for you to be like, here's how I get out of my depression. Yeah. You know what I mean? But if you do the research and you come up with some good ideas that resonate with you, then that's something you could share. So we could actually take the rubric of like the whole murder mystery kind of thing, and we can use that to where 1 week you come to the podcast with like, this week I'm going to talk about depression, and I'm going to give like a little life story about how it has affected you, and then maybe some tips on tips that you've learned or that you've researched that could not only benefit you but somebody else. And then the next week I'll come to the podcast with like, well, today I'm going to talk about, what's going on in my life, whether sobriety or, being over 50 or, something like that, or like, I'm just trying to spitball.
Yeah, no, and I like that idea a lot, actually, because I think we have I think we got more skin in the game when it comes to that.
Okay.
And I think also too, I think it's something that we kind of would resonate more with, and it's still kind of in the wheelhouse of dealing with sobriety and daily life and stuff like that. The only thing that I would want to worry about is I don't ever want to feel like preachy about it, like, oh well, this is how you cure depression, because like fundamentally as people, I think I don't want to speak for you, but I know I am not a well functioning person, and I never want to give the illusion that I have all the answers. So I think if we word it in a way that like, oh, this is, like you say, like this is definition, examples, kind of case in point kind of thing, I wouldn't mind that at all, actually. I think that's a little bit more intriguing than like,
I did my research.
Yeah, the igloo man who lives in Seattle, collected 17 odd snowballs once, kind of thing. And I think there's a little bit more at stake with that kind of issue.
Yeah, because I am such a bucket full of issues. I was going to say of misfiring. I can't think of the right word that I had in my mind, but I mean, I can go all the way back to like dealing with like childhood trauma and, parenting, being a sober parent now, it's what I really want to do was I really want it to be where whatever week you come up with the subject, I want it to be where it really, it's personal to you.
Sure.
So 1 week and it's personal to me. And so then that way it gives you the opportunity to branch out in whatever direction you want, and you're not going to be preachy, and we're not professionals. We're not psychiatrists. We're not doctors, but we do have a life story. And I think that if we represent this as my life story, and here's what I have found that could help me and perhaps help you, it doesn't come across as preachy.
Okay. Yeah. It's just, I think there'd be like red flag phrases that I tend not to like, oh, this is what you should do, or this is what anybody who has this I recommend, kind of thing. I think it would be more of like, hey, listen, this is, as somebody with this kind of thing, this is what I learned, and this is how, like, example, counterpoint kind of thing.
Yeah. And because, and I really like the idea of how like 1 week you do it, 1 week I do it. So then that way it really makes it kind of like personal, and it gives us time to really come to the podcast with like, almost like a little segment. And it's going to be your comfort zone on how you relay your information. I don't think that there's any right way or wrong way to say how you feel. You know what I mean? Like if you feel like you want to tell somebody about dealing with depression your way, that's the right way to do it. So
yeah, I understand your basis behind it. Yeah. Like, oh, well, like, because depression is a hard thing. It's a hard thing to talk about. And I think by addressing it, it kind of makes it a little bit less scary, kind of thing. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. As long as we avoid the whole like, oh, well, this is 10 ways to deal with depression. And I think it is not something I'd be overly excited about, versus like, hey, this is what causes depression, or, like I was reading an article, and this is generally the chemical imbalance in your brain that leads to it, something that's a little bit more concrete and scientific facts. And then like an example, like counterpoint of like, this is when I felt depressed and this is how I dealt with my depression, versus like, oh, well, if you're depressed, just do X, Y, and Z. Because like, I know one thing as somebody who, like, when you get depressed, people are always like, oh, well, just just be happy. And you're like, well, no, that's not, if it was that easy, I wouldn't be depressed.
If that was an option, I would have taken it.
So like, I never want to be in a spot where it's like, oh, how to cure depression. Just don't do it, So like, don't be depressed. And I think if we avoid those pitfall, like blanketed, like just, I don't want to say half-assed responses, but like those, like I said, kind of pedestal, podcast having kind of mentality, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, because we're going to be talking about our own life experiences. So there is no like, it's not preachy. It's our life. I mean, this is what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I just, like I said, that's we don't need to keep dancing around it, but like the whole like soapbox kind of, standing on top of the soapbox, like, oh, this is how you do things kind of thing. And I'd be really okay with it. Okay. I actually really like this idea a lot more than the murder mystery thing. Okay. Because I don't like blood or violence. So. Yeah.
And then, whatever subject you come up with, whatever your week, I just want you to know that, there's no right or wrong. It's like if you decide to talk about, I don't know, the joys of, of having a mustache and how it makes you feel, then that is the subject that I never want, because I don't want it to be where, because, we live in the same house. I don't want it to be where I talk about my subject all for 2 weeks. And then by the time that we talk about it, you're all burnt out on it.
Okay. Because that's something that I could see happening.
Yes. Yeah. And so I'm trying to be super proactive in that. So, I'm just saying, out of respect for each other, whatever subjects we come up with, that we've done our research, that we present, that we talk about, we'll just meet each other with respect for whatever subject that was. Okay. You know what I mean?
And you had mentioned on the car ride home too, that like when we're presenting or when we're storytelling, I know sometimes I come off as belittling, and I'm going to try my very best to not actively like poke holes or try to make you feel silly or stupid. Yeah. When you're talking about your subject.
See, and sometimes, and now that you're repeating that back to me, sometimes I think I am more sensitive than I should be when you're asking questions.
That's fair.
So I think that, in the grand scheme of growth, I'm going to not be so, childlike, I guess. Like I was saying on the walk, I want to be more maternal. I'm the maternal figure of our family. Sure. I am the oldest living female of our family. And sometimes I feel like I get into a real childlike role, which I am actively going to be changing. Okay. So
I can see that. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Yeah. And so what I'm going to try to do is, like, if you have a question, like if you really genuinely have a question, I don't want you to be like, oh, if I ask this question, is she going to get her feelings hurt? Because, I want this to be engaging. Sure. And I want it to be where I can counterpoint, any of my subject.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you make a really valid point too. And like, obviously, like sometimes I think my sense of humor, it could be very easily mistaken for like insulting. And so like, I'm going to take a more of a conscious effort to think before I speak. And, cause like, your words and actions have consequences, and I'm not going to try to, I never do it purposely, but I never try to make you feel stupid, and I'm going to try to respect your time and your research and try to learn something from it. Yeah. And maybe more so just look at it from your point of view, and like if you're reporting about something or if you're talking about something, like understand where you're coming from with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So. And then also too, sometimes I think that your words are kind of stingy because you don't vocalize your thoughts as often as you should. What do you mean? Sometimes I think that you get instead of being like, no, I don't want to do that right now, or what, you're bothering me, your words get, instead of saying no, not right now, your dialogue is stingy.
To kind of like push you away kind of thing? Yeah. Okay.
Kind of like, I'm really pissed that I have to do this, but I didn't tell her no.
So I'm going to be a little spiteful.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, truthfully, at the end of the day, I know, like, if you say something a little, like a little sharp or anything like that, I know that you're not trying to be mean. I just know that sometimes it just comes out. Yeah. So But yeah, no, I think that this is really cool. And I'm
Yeah.
really glad that we got to talk about, what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I definitely like this idea a lot more than... I mean, the murder mystery thing was cool, and it was definitely a good jumping off point. But I think we got, like I said, we a little bit more skin in the game when it comes to talking about like depression or alcoholism or, anything that we find a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to help not only that, but I think, because if you do 1 week and I do 1 week, it'll give us time to research and we might learn something we didn't know or about it. Because you think of like, we keep jumping off like depression or alcoholism as,
but that's
I
really
like they're
relevant.
very blanketed statements, and I think there's a lot more depth to it.
Oh yeah.
And I think by us like researching it and talking about it, I think it provides a little bit more clarification, because like you think of like alcoholism, and it's like, especially like in the 90s and, growing up and things like that, like alcoholism was a bad thing or AA was a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you were an Alcoholics Anonymous, you were like really just burnt out and beat up, and it was almost like vilified.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like now it's, I think of it as a great support group. I think it's a great system, and it's weird to see like that change. And I think if we dive more into these kind of topics, I think it'll be very beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I look at depression like an onion.
Uh-huh.
It peels back one more layer,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many things that add to that depression.
Yeah.
It's not a one size fits all cure all.
So, okay. So then how are you going to do this? Like, how are you going to report? Is it like, are you going to write everything in a notebook or?
Well, that's what I was planning on doing is
Okay.
like, I was planning on thinking about a subject that is like near and dear to my heart at this moment, and at that point, what I'm going to do is I thought, because I want to have it like, a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Sure.
So what I was thinking about doing is like, telling you about what's really like on my mind, and then a life story that connects with this subject.
Sure.
Then maybe like a little research that I've done, like maybe books I've read or things that have helped me. And then at the ending, just kind of be like, you know what, I started here, I've found this, and this is what I think about it now. Kind of
Sure.
beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah. Okay. Now, do you want me to go first, or do you want?
I was just going to ask you that. I mean, what do you prefer?
Yeah, I don't mind going first.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have an idea what you want your first topic to be about?
You know what? I was just thinking about that. And I mean, it's like, for me personally, I think the biggest thing that is going through my mind at this moment is really just separating my childhood trauma from my adult trauma.
Okay.
It's so weird. It's like one was given to me and one I did myself.
Okay.
And I think that I really, and like the therapist was saying, I really need to address my inner younger child. So I think that will probably be my first subject is like separating childhood trauma from adult trauma.
Okay.
Because we go from being a victim to victimizing ourselves.
Sure. I think that'd be, not only does it sound it's interesting to think about, but it's also, I think it's going to be very beneficial for you as a person.
Yeah, I think every episode we do, since it is going to be on a personal level, is going to be beneficial to both of us.
Yeah.
It's going to, she needs to go
While they're
outside. It's going to force us to basically, to think about things that are going on in our lives. And by trying to like find the, I wouldn't say like the cure, but to find tips to help with that situation, I think is going to help us find tips to help us with ourselves.
Yeah, I think so too. If nothing else, it kind of helps us understand the other. Because I think you and I have a lot of problems. We run into a lot of communication problems. And I think they end up becoming larger problems in the long run. So I think this will end up helping because, you're doing a topic, I'm doing a topic. It kind of helps us look into the other person's point of view.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And truthfully, I think one thing that we don't have in a family that I think that we're starting to have is compassion. It's hard to have compassion for somebody else when you're hurting.
Sure.
And I have found that in my growth, sometimes I get frustrated with you and Brandon, but I'm no longer getting frustrated with y'all. I have compassion.
Sure.
And to me, by having compassion, it makes it easier to not have like that hurt little child kind of like
mentality.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's understandable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's been a really growing, truthfully, the last year,
Mm-hmm.
and probably most of the last couple of months have been really growing.
Yeah, I would say the last maybe like 6 months.
Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of growth.
Yeah. Well, that's also too when we had the therapist,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And it's so funny because we only talk to her once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it's like, I find that I like want instantaneous like fixes.
Yeah.
That I needed to sit back and realize that this is a marathon, not a race.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's slowly but surely just kind of coming all together.
Yeah. What's really interesting and fascinating about her, and she really doesn't do anything crazy. There's no like, she doesn't have like some sort of like crazy miracle cure.
Mm-hmm.
What she really does is she listens to us and she almost interprets it to the other.
Yeah.
And it's really just, okay, you know, Lonnie, you were saying this, Brandon construed it as this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, blah, 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 blah kind of thing. And it really just helps you understand that like the intentions are there. I mean, like, I don't think any of us are trying to cause us harm or any like, you know, malice or anything like that. We just have a very hard time communicating.
Yeah. Have you ever watched her face when one person is talking?
Mm-hmm.
She's very intent. I mean, it's almost like she doesn't look at the screen.
Yeah.
She just listens to the words, and it's really cool.
Yeah, she mentioned that her first or second thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like whenever we're talking, she like pictures the words.
Yeah.
Almost like in subtitles, and it really
Yeah.
helps her focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's been really, I mean, to me, it's been really, really cool.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good idea. So I'll go first.
What is yours? Do you have an
yeah.
idea?
I'll I want to talk about the benefits of working out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and what it does neurologically.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So I'll do that, and then we'll do that, and then next week you'll do yours, and I'll do the following. And I think between that, I think we'll have at least for a good couple of months. I think we'll have enough substance to continue.
See, I just don't think that I mean, it is such a broad subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the whole thing is, it's like the subject that I'm talking about, that's
Yeah.
just scratching the surface.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to talk about. So,
Yeah.
Um,
And what I would like, if it's okay with you, it's
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of next week when you're done and we're
Mm-hmm.
done with the podcast, I would like to be like, and then, you know, next
week we have this.
This is the subject that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so that way the audience knows, you know, what's coming up for the next set next Monday.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
It sounds fun. I'm glad that we were able to, you know, because we were really considering like, is this podcast even worth it? You know, it's not that it's not worth it, but I think,
I was just worried that they were bored listening to
Yeah.
the same thing over and over and over again.
And I think, well, I think the inconsistency of our personalities. You know, one week we're like super fun and giggly, the other week we're a little short and running out of things to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that we're going to eliminate that kind of randomness is going to be really nice.
Yeah, and also too, I mean, if anybody's been listening to the podcast long enough, you know that we were going through some stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we were going through some stuff to where the point where we couldn't fake it to even be like,
Yeah,
hey, we're just going to be fun.
We couldn't be civil for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, and personally, I think that is really, if that doesn't say a lot about our integrity and our podcast, I mean, that says a lot, because it's like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, hey, my life is perfect. And, you know, and I'm shitting out roses.
Yeah, that's always the biggest, what I have the biggest problem with social media content creators. I don't want to call them influencers, but content creators, is that they have this, they look through life with this like odd colored lens, and they think that, you know, they are perceived to be perfect and flawless. And that's not the case, you know?
Well, a lot of them put out what they think people want to see.
Yeah.
You know, they don't think that people want to see the true grit of real life. And, you know. Yeah,
and that's one thing that I think I've always prided ourselves on. And we're just like, yeah, we're just as fucked up as everyone else.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I'm happy with this.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
So we will come back next week talking about the benefits of working out.
Yep.
And it will be led by Robert.
That's me.
And I'm super excited to hear what you find out.
Yeah, it should be cool.
Awesome.
I'm trying to figure out the best way for me to, I don't know if I want to write it all down. Maybe I will. I'll have to find a notepad.
See, what I was planning on doing is like doing, I'm going to do my research, and then I'm going to write down what I want to talk about.
Okay.
You know, and also too, I'm going to have my laptop.
Yeah.
So if you want to put it on your laptop, that's perfectly fine
No,
too.
because we use it for the audio recording. What I'll probably do is I'll probably share it. I'll probably do it on my notebook and then on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do have extra spiral notebooks if you want
I
one.
think I got a couple lying around, so we'll be okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
And you know what? And if it's not perfect the first week, this is something that we're going to be working on.
Yeah, trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, Mom. Well, do you want to tell them where to find us?
I absolutely do. You can find Robert as Robert Pike on Instagram, and he is Sherbert on YouTube and TikTok. And I am Gray Hair and Tattoos across the board, along with my little YouTube channel, Emotional Baggage, where you get to hang out with me and go explore the beauties of the world around me.
Yeah.
All right. I hope you all enjoyed this. Looking forward to next week, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.